Hello, everybody, and a very, very warm welcome to Interchange26. My name is Helen Etheridge, and I'm the British Council's Global Alumni Lead, and I'm really delighted to be chairing this opening plenary and really looking forward actually to 3 days of dialogue, learning, and exchange with all of you. And it's great actually to see so many people joining us from across the world. In case you haven't been involved in Interchange before, it's now in its 6th edition, and it's a real pleasure actually to see how the conference continues to grow and evolve. It's a virtual conference, of course, and it's delivered by the British Council on behalf of the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission in the UK for yourselves, Commonwealth scholars and alumni across the globe. And this year, we're pleased to see that we have over 500 participants. And just, that diversity and the reach of people in this virtual room with us today is truly global. This year's theme, as you will have seen in the communications prior to today, is the power of equity, advancing fair trade and social enterprise for global prosperity. Across the next 3 days, we'll be exploring what equity really looks like in practice, in business, in research, in policy, and I think most importantly, in communities. And actually how fair trade and social enterprise can help tackle some of today's most pressing global challenges. So the aim is for this conference really to offer a platform to showcase work advancing equity, building sustainable enterprises, and developing practical solutions to global development challenges, very importantly, while strengthening global networks amongst yourselves. And again, over the next 3 days, what you will see, what you'll be part of is a program featuring panel discussions, keynotes, workshops, and interviews, and quite excitingly, networking sessions as well. All of the sessions are live with recordings available afterwards in case you can't catch them all in real time. So just a few quick practical notes on housekeeping before we get going. Please do use the Q&A tab to post questions for our speakers, and you will be able to upvote those questions that you'd especially like to see addressed. We do have live captions available in English via the link in the chat for you, and that link has gone out now already, so you should see it there. Today's session and all of the sessions over the next 3 days, as I say, are being recorded, and they're going to be shared after the event on the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission's website. And finally, if you unfortunately run into any technical issues, which I hope you don't, but please do just drop a message into the lobby chat, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So that's the housekeeping out of the way. And now it really is my pleasure to invite you to hear a recorded message from Chris Elmore, MP, Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State at the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. So I'll see you in a couple of minutes, and we're going to see that recording now.
Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to you all joining from across the Commonwealth. Sorry I couldn't be there with you. Thank you to the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission and the British Council for bringing everyone together. Interchange is another chance for us to keep talking, share ideas and learn from each other. This year's theme could not be more timely. Fair trade, equity and social enterprise are not only the right things to pursue, they make societies and economies stronger. Around the world, we see that customers, investors and markets increasingly reward organisations that act responsibly and with real social purpose. And you, as current and former Commonwealth scholars, are uniquely placed to lead this work in your communities. There is also a clear business case: sustainable supply chains, ethical sourcing and inclusive ways of doing business, reduce risk, open new markets and create long-term value. Social enterprises often break new ground where traditional models struggle. And that's why I want to highlight the role the Commonwealth scholarships play, especially the entrepreneurship startup fellowships, in helping create real social impact and good jobs for young people across the Commonwealth. We all know the landscape is changing fast. More and more people want goods made responsibly, businesses that support the climate and investment that delivers real benefits, but challenges remain. Growing ideas at scale, finding the right funding and making sure global supply chains are fair, open and resilient. That is why collaboration matters. Real change happens when government, businesses, civil society, academia and communities work together. I encourage you to use your networks here to build partnerships that unlock new capabilities and accelerate growth. Innovation and technology will also play a huge role. Digital tools, AI and new enterprise models are creating opportunities we could only imagine a few years ago. Over the next 2.5 days, I hope you make the most of this platform. Your drive and commitment can help build a fairer global economy, and I wish you all a productive and inspiring Interchange 26.
Many thanks to Chris Elmore MP for those remarks. I'm now delighted to invite Professor Robin Mason, Chair of the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission in the UK, to deliver a welcome on behalf of the Commission. So over to you, Professor Mason. Thank you.
Helen, thank you very much. And it's a real pleasure to add my welcome to Helen's, to be with so many of you here today from all across the Commonwealth. And also, I want to say thanks to Minister Chris Elmore. It was great that he was able to speak to us today. Actually, he was with us just a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, welcoming all the fresh Commonwealth scholars at our Connect and Collaborate event in London. But on behalf of the whole Commission, myself as Chair of the Commission and all of my fellow Commissioners, first, thanks to our partners at the British Council, colleagues from the Association of Commonwealth Universities, all of our speakers today, and of course, all, I'm told, 508 of you for being here. You will all know the role that the CSC has played for, it's actually the last 66 years, in enabling outstanding individuals like you from across the Commonwealth to develop their skills and potential. And then, importantly, to use those skills and the fulfilled potential to make a lasting difference across the Commonwealth. So it was back in 1960 that we welcomed our first scholars, all 175 of them, to come and study in the UK. And since that time, we now have more than 31,000 Commonwealth scholars. I think it's actually closer to 32,000 now, who have passed through the scheme. And no pressure, but our alumni include prime ministers, cabinet ministers, Nobel Prize winners, leading academics, diplomats, writers, leaders across civil society and business. And I'll be telling you about some of our alumni later. And one of the exciting things to think is that somebody, more than one person who is at the Interchange event over the next 3 days will be spotlighted in future, will be a showcase for the excellence of our alumni. Now, each scholar, you will know, is selected not just for academic excellence, although that is the sine qua non, but also for commitment, demonstrable commitment to impact, and for the contribution that they'll make to global knowledge across the Commonwealth by bringing diverse perspectives, expertise, and leadership. And you, our alumni, really are what the CSC is all about. Without you, the CSC is nothing, and we are incredibly proud of you. Some of you will already know the statistic that we get in excess of 45,000 applications each year, from which we're able to select only 600 to 650. So you are incredibly special people to have been chosen to be a recipient of scholarships. And I'm going to come back to that theme in just a moment. But if I move on to the theme of this year's Interchange, as the Minister Chris Elmore said, the theme Power of Equity, Advancing Fair Trade and Social Enterprise for Global Prosperity couldn't be more timely, and it couldn't be more central to the mission of the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission. We live in a world of extraordinary capability, but deeply uneven outcomes. Trade has expanded, innovation has accelerated, and yet too many people remain excluded from the benefits of growth. Inequality, both within and between countries, has the effect of eroding trust. If left unchecked, it weakens institutions and it can undermine social cohesion. So in all of those senses, equity is not just about charity. Far from it. It's about fair access to opportunity, fair rules, and fair participation in value creation. And that's why fair trade and social enterprise matter so much. Fair trade helps to address power imbalances in global markets. And we know that power imbalances mean that markets function inefficiently and ineffectively. You can tell I'm an economist there in that statement. Social enterprise shows that economic activity can generate public value as well as private return. Markets left on their own are very good at private return, but weaker at public value. Social enterprise plugs that gap. And both demonstrate that prosperity is strongest when it's shared. And so at its core, the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission is an equity institution, founded on a simple idea that talent is evenly distributed across the Commonwealth, but opportunity is not. So every scholarship that we grant is an investment in potential rather than privilege, capability rather than circumstance, and investment for the long term rather than any short-term gain. And crucially, our scholars don't simply benefit from the opportunity to study in the UK, they multiply it through what they go on to do in enterprise, policy, education, healthcare, and leadership. So that's where the CSE's mission aligns so directly with the theme of these 3 days, with fair trade and social enterprise. Both are about changing systems as well as supporting individuals. So let me briefly illustrate what all of this looks like in practice. I'm going to tell you about some of your fellow alumni. Editha Mishu in Tanzania saw that smallholder farmers were losing income, not because they couldn't grow food, but because they couldn't store it. Through her social enterprise, Freshpack Technologies, she introduced low-cost, energy-free storage solutions. Waste fell, farmers sold at fairer prices, and more value stayed locally. That is equity in action. In Nigeria, Israel Balogun has worked to ensure that people with disabilities are not excluded from economic and civic life. His enterprise deliberately hires from marginalized communities, combining commercial sustainability with dignity, skills, and opportunity. And that's a great example of social enterprise doing exactly what it promises. Subongani Kayola from Zambia used her training not to build a single organization, but to strengthen entire ecosystems, mentoring entrepreneurs, working with cooperatives, shaping inclusive business policy across multiple countries, including Liberia, Sudan, as well as Zambia. And that shows how equity can scale. And then you will have heard the Minister, Chris Elmore, refer to the Commonwealth Startup Fellowship, which is a relatively new scheme that we have opened. We're working with our second cohort, and already we're seeing alumni of the Startup Fellowships building ventures across agritech, clean energy, fintech, health and climate solutions, and in the process creating jobs, widening access, embedding social value into growth. So you start to get, from just those examples, a flavour of how the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission really does have at its core this idea of fair trade and social enterprise. What connects them all, of course, is the Commonwealth. Shared values, shared learning, and a commitment to turning opportunity into impact. So, I'm almost finished, you'll be pleased to hear. But before I close, a word on engagement. I've told you, I hope, some really inspirational stories. I need you to stay connected with us so that we can tell your stories to others in future. Without your engagement, we can't demonstrate the impact that we know that the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission has. And without demonstrating impact, it becomes harder for me to make the case to expand the number of scholarships that we can offer. We remain completely committed to supporting you as alumni through events like Interchange, networking opportunities, publications, local alumni activity. Membership of the alumni network is free for you. So all that we ask in return is the simple thing: stay engaged, stay active, let us know about, and therefore let us tell your story. So I really am about to finish. but I can't do that before I acknowledge the really generous support of the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. They are our sponsoring and funding body, and without their generous backing, the work of the CSC not only wouldn't be possible, it simply wouldn't happen. Let me thank once again colleagues at the British Council for this week's event. It's the 6th Interchange, and they are fabulous events. They give you a chance to connect and to collaborate, share ideas, challenge assumptions, learn from people working in different contexts and disciplines. Let me encourage you with the words, you'll get out of this event what you put into it. So let me leave you with that challenge. On top of that, let me leave you with a second challenge. A big part of this is networking. So I challenge you, connect with someone from a different country, a different discipline, a different sector. And since there are 508 of you, I don't think it's unreasonable to say your aim, your mission, should you accept it, is to leave Interchange with at least, let me say 50 new contacts. I'll be interested to see how many people hit that. Don't treat that as a maximum, treat it as a minimum. If you can go beyond 50, go for it. So thank you all for being here. I wish you a great, stimulating and inspiring interchange. Helen, thanks very much. Back to you.
Thanks so much, Professor Mason, for those words. And I think you mentioned engagement there, and we're already seeing that the audience are engaging at the moment. I hope you've been seeing the applause and the love hearts there. It's nice, although we can't sort of see your faces at the moment, that we know that you're there and engaged. And as we move into the next part of the session now, I'm delighted actually to hand over the chair's role to one of our distinguished alumni to join the ranks of those mentioned there before. And it's my pleasure to introduce Sarah Amoy-Okimaru. Sarah is a 2012 Commonwealth Shared Scholar from Kenya, who completed her LLM in international law at the University of Bristol. Sarah, I'm just going to say a few more words about you before I hand over. I hope that's okay. It's nice for people to know who they're listening to. So Sarah is the founding partner of Amoy and Safe Law LLP, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and an accomplished arbitrator and certified mediator, commissioner of oaths, and notary public with over 15 years experience in dispute resolution and constitutional litigation. Alongside her legal practice in Nairobi and Mombasa, Sarah is deeply committed to mentoring the next generation of lawyers and serves as a lecturer at the Technical University of Kenya. And if that wasn't quite enough, Sarah is also the current president of the Commonwealth Scholarships Alumni Association of Kenya. Sarah, you sound like a very busy lady, and it's my real pleasure now to hand the microphone over to you. And Sarah is going to be chairing the next part of today's session. So thank you ever so much, everyone, and I will see you all a little bit later today. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you, Ellen. And also, I know I probably wrote those words, but thank you for reading them so nicely and so well. Thank you, everyone, and welcome again to Interchange 26 to everyone. I'm very, very happy to be here. Before we begin, allow me to start by thanking our host, the CSC, the British Council, for setting the tone so well with the plenary session, and also most importantly for creating platforms like this that allow us, as Professor Mason said, spaces that allow us to not only share our ideas, but to test assumptions, exchange experiences, and demonstrate proof of concept of what actually works in real life. So we accept the mission, Professor Mason, as we start. To start us off, we do have a keynote speaker who provides an anchor to our theme for the day, as well as set the thematic foundation for not only today's discussion, but the next 3 days of dialogue in Interchange 26, as we explore the power of equity, advancing fair trade and social enterprise for global prosperity. It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Nfor Carlton Mbunwe. Hopefully I have not massacred his name. Nfor is a 2024 Commonwealth Scholar, a Startup Fellow actually, a Cameroonian social entrepreneur, and the co-founder of Innovative Clan. Innovative Clan created what School Pay, an education financing platform that is expanding access to schooling for underprivileged children. Nfor himself grew up and schooled in an underserved part of the northern region of Cameroon, and Carlton or Nfor witnessed firsthand how poverty continues to force thousands of children out of education. That lived experience is what shaped his mission to ensure that no child is denied education because of financial hardship. So I'm very, very happy to invite our keynote speaker before we continue with the rest of the session. Nfor, are you with us today?
Yes, Sarah, I'm with you. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, over to you, Nfor.
So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us from across the Commonwealth. It's an honor to speak to a community that spans continents, cultures, and histories, yet is united by a shared belief that opportunity should never be determined by accident of birth. I want to begin with a moment that shaped my understanding of equity long before I had the language for it. I was about 12 years old, standing outside my school gate, I think in the northern part of Cameroon, watching my best friend turn around and walk home. Not because he was sick, not because he failed an exam, but because his mother had just told him they could not pay the school fees. This was the first time I understood something painful and profound. In my world, education did not depend on intelligence or effort. It depended on whether money arrived on time. I grew up in a farming community where child's education depended on something very fragile, the harvest. So if crops were still in the farm, children were sent home. If the rains came late, children missed exams. If the harvest failed, children dropped out, sometimes forever. So I watched mothers cry, not because they were hungry, but because their maize was not ready and their children were about to miss school. Slowly, education stopped being a right. In fact, it became a gamble. At this age, really, I thought this was normal. I thought poverty was fate. I thought inequality was permanent. But today, I know something different. What we often call normal is simply injustice that has existed long enough to feel acceptable. And in fact, this injustice is not local. I've come to realize that it is global. As a matter of fact, across the globe today, millions of children drop out of school every year, not because they lack intelligence, but because systems are not designed for real life. This is not a crisis of talent per se. I think it's a crisis of equity. And that's where the Commonwealth matters. I think it's one of the Commonwealth is not just a network of nations per se. It is one of those few global communities built on a shared moral commitment that of fairness, cooperation, and shared responsibility for the most vulnerable. The theme of our gathering today is the power of equity. This is not just aspirational. It is the Commonwealth's mandate for the 21st century. Equity is not charity. Equity is infrastructure. Let me say, in fact, just as roads connect markets and electricity powers industries, equity connects human potential to human progress. Without it, trade becomes extractive, research remains distant from communities, and social enterprise risks becoming symbolic rather than transformational. With equity, knowledge moves. With equity, opportunity scales. With equity, prosperity becomes shared. My own journey changed when I joined the Commonwealth Startup Fellowship. School pay existed before the Commonwealth. We had already built a product. But what Commonwealth gave me was not technology. It gave me a philosophy, a way of thinking about impact rooted in equity. Through the fellowship, I learned 3 lessons that will shape our work. First, real impact is not about growth, it's about access. Secondly, systems must be designed for people's realities, not ideal conditions. And third, perhaps the most important, lasting solutions are co-created with communities, governments, and institutions working together. That philosophy is what turned school pay from a startup into a system. In fact, school pay exists for one reason: to ensure that no child drops out of school silently because money arrived late, income was disrupted, or crisis displaced a family. Working closely with the Cameroonian government, school pay became a national tool to identify and support children at risk of dropping out, particularly those affected by conflict and internal displacement. For the very first time, education authorities in my country could see in real time which children were classified as social cases, identifying internally displaced families, underprivileged households, and children whose schooling had been interrupted by crises or just financial challenges. Through the collaboration with the government, as an example, over 30,000 children who were at risk of permanent dropout regained access to school. Not through charity, but through systems that allowed policy to reach the child. Fees could be waived automatically for some. Support could be given to targeted areas accurately, and children could remain in classrooms instead of disappearing quietly from the system. At the same time, for me, something powerful happened within the Commonwealth itself. I was opportune to network with some key people who taught us one key thing: the power of the alumni. And that's how we now translated this into our own product, where alumni groups are now sponsoring their children or their children from their schools who are about dropping out. We've rolled out in the northern region where I came from, and the result, it's really encouraging. So for the very first time also, these alumni could clearly see who they were supporting. They could follow progress over time and witness the direct impact of their contribution. So scholarship stopped being abstract. It became accountable, visible, and human. Parents too experienced a profound shift. For families whose income is seasonal or unpredictable, school pay removed that constant fear. Parents could pay fees gradually, knowing their children will not be sent home during difficult periods. They could focus on rebuilding livelihoods without the daily anxiety of school exclusion. This is what equity looks like in practice. Not removing responsibility, but removing fear. We also partnered with financial institutions and mobile money operators, not to scale really for scale's sake, but to solve a specific problem: education financing during moments of hardship. Every partnership was guided by just one question: does this keep children in school? If the answer was no, we really did not proceed. This is the difference between scaling a product and building a system. This is what social enterprise must mean within the Commonwealth. Not profit versus purpose, but purpose embedded in how systems function. Fair trade is not only about prices, it's about power. Who is protected, who is included, and who is seen. Equity is not treating everyone the same. It is recognizing different starting points and designing systems that respond accordingly. It means technology that works offline, policies that reach displaced families, and success measured not in reports written, but in children who stay in school, for example. So to every Commonwealth scholar and alumnus listening today, you are not simply beneficiaries of opportunity. You are custodian of a shared mandate. Your greatest asset is not your degree, it is your ability to connect worlds, research and reality, policy and people, innovation and inclusion. And with that privilege comes responsibility. Use your education to challenge unfair systems. Use your network to turn empathy into action. Use your success to widen access rather than narrow it. Because the future of global prosperity will not be decided by isolated excellence. It will be decided by whether the communities like the Commonwealth choose equity deliberately, systematically, and courageously. Let me leave you with this. The Commonwealth's future will not be judged by the knowledge we produce, but by the children who stay in school because our systems finally worked for them. That's the power of equity. That is the promise of the Commonwealth, and that is the work that now belongs to really all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was very, very insightful. Keynote, thank you very much, Nfor. And I hope that you remain around. Perhaps when we have time at the end of it, we might be able to take a few questions for you. But please do remain around. As we continue then, I think what Nfor has done is framed the issue that will guide our conversations over the next few days, but also he has framed very well what our discussion is for today. He has told us that equity is infrastructure, that with equity knowledge moves, and it also helps you in your way of thinking. So in that discussion, our theme today was knowledge without borders, how Commonwealth research translates into impact. And we can see that at its heart, as also Nfor has told us, this is about movement, how ideas travel from research into practice across borders, sectors, and communities, and how they translate into outcomes that matter. So our discussion today, we will now go to the discussion for the day. And to start these conversations, we will have a discussion that will be led by our moderator. Allow me to introduce her. Monisha Krishnamurthy is our moderator for today. And she will introduce me. Hi, it's nice to see you, Monisha. Monisha is a senior executive in research and development at Y2Y Group, which is also called Indorama. I think it was formerly called Indorama. She is a 2022 Commonwealth Split Site Scholar from Malaysia with a doctoral background in polymer chemistry. In polymer chemistry, her work focuses on developing advanced material for environmental and industrial applications, including sustainable wastewater treatment solutions. Her experience at the intersection of research, industry, and sustainability makes her well placed to guide today's discussion and help connect research innovation to real-world impact. She will also introduce us to amazing alumni who are leaders in their respective fields. Over to you, Monisha.
Thank you, Sarah, for the beautiful introduction. So hello, everyone. Welcome to this section on Knowledge Without Borders, how Commonwealth research translates into impact. Today, we will explore how collaborative research across Commonwealth nations drives innovation, addresses global challenges, and transforms knowledge into meaningful societal and economic impact. This session will highlight the importance of cross-borders partnerships, knowledge sharing, and translating research outcomes into the real-world solutions. I'm honored to moderate this session and looking forward to an engaging and insightful discussion with our distinguished speakers and participants. Without further delay, I would like to introduce all our panelists and invite them on the screen. Mr. Souvik Kumar Ghosh, Riazat Faisal, Sainia Amy Bakar, and Rachel Inek Dion. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your names right. So let's begin with an introduction for each our panel member. Can we start with you, Mr. Souvik?
Thanks, Monisha. I think I'm clearly audible and visible. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So nice to meet all of you. So thank you again, Monisha, and of course for inviting me to this platform. So I'm Souvik Ghosh, Director of Global Sustainability at HCL Technologies Limited. My work sits squarely between academia, policy, and industry, translating sustainability and climate research into governance frameworks, supply chain resilience, and business decisions across global markets. I'm looking forward to this session discussing how Commonwealth research can better travel from knowledge to impact. Thank you.
It's a great introduction. We are looking forward to hear from you more. So can we have introduction from Rachel?
Hello, everyone, wherever you are. Thank you for the warm welcome. My name is Rachel, and I'm joining today from Boston in the United States, where I'm currently pursuing my PhD in Global Inclusion and Social Development at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. And so my work is looking at how public policy, labor systems, and social services can become more inclusive for people with disabilities. I'm also proud to be a Commonwealth Shared Scholar of Class 2022, and I completed my master's in sustainable development at University of St. Andrews in Scotland. I wear many hats as a researcher, an advocate, a producer, and host of a New England-based radio program on WUMB 91.9 FM. And lastly, the founder and executive director of a nonprofit in Nigeria known as the Special Needs Initiative for Growth. And so with my work, I've collaborated with communities, governments, and international partners to design programs that promote workforce inclusion and digital access for people with disabilities in mind. I'm so glad to be here, and I look forward to learning from all of us. Thank you.
That's a great introduction, Rachel. We are looking forward to hear a lot more from you. So can we hear from Rizat?
Hello, everyone. This is Riyasat. I'm from 2016-2017 Commonwealth Shared Scholar, and I did my master's from London University of Westminster International Planning and Sustainable Development. That's where everything began, actually. Like where I am now, it started from that opportunity, I would say. I'm currently residing in Canada, so it's a very odd time. I think it's like 5:40 a.m. So yeah, and but I'm originally from Bangladesh. I recently finished my PhD, which is on climate-induced migrants working in the ready-made garments sector and the transition they go through in urban areas. So that was my PhD about. And I'm really looking forward to this discussion. And I'm already really excited hearing about all the other panelists, the speakers that have already spoken. So yeah, looking forward to the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Riyasat. Lastly, we would like to hear from Sainia.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, Moisha. My name is Sainia Amy Bakar. I'm a Commonwealth Scholar, 2013 Commonwealth Scholar, with an MSc in Sustainability, Environment and Development from the University of Leeds. My academic and professional journey sits through an intersection of research and practice. I have a background in extractives, climate change, and development work across various organizations from local to national institutions to regional bodies. But currently, I found and lead an organization known as Jalimi Farms and Foods, which is a women-led agribusiness. Through my work at Jalimi Farms and Foods, I work closely with female farmers to translate research into sustainability, livelihoods, and into practical systems for them to improve their livelihoods. So my work is deeply grounded in co-creation with the communities, because I believe that it's only when we create together that we could make real impacts. So in a nutshell, that's all from me for now.
So thank you everyone for giving a very great introduction about yourself. So without any further delay, let's move on to our discussion today. So the first question for this session would be, how has your Commonwealth Scholarship experience equipped you to bridge the gap between academic research and real-world application in your field? Can we have your opinion, Rachel, on this matter?
Absolutely. Thank you. I think from my Commonwealth Scholarship experience, it's really shaped not only how I think about research, but how I use it in real world, people-centered ways. And as I stated earlier in my intro, I studied sustainable development at the University of St. Andrews as a shared scholar back in 2022. And that year changed everything for me. Before then, I had led disability programs in Africa, in my home country, in other parts of Africa, and focusing on employment and access. But studying in Scotland gave me the tools to stop and think, who else could be missing from these conversations? And how do we build systems that truly center those at the margins? And so one of the most important lessons that I take away from that year is that research does not seem to start or end in a university. At St. Andrews, I worked on disability inclusion frameworks and policies, but I also had intentional conversations with caregivers, community workers, policy staff in Scotland who were trying to address exclusion. And I did this through a radio program back then known as the Black Indigenous People of Color and Disability Community. It was called BIPOC, where I interviewed students, faculty, and practitioners just so I can get a down-to-earth conversation in academic research and community realities. And that really made me look at my own work differently. When I went back to the field in my nonprofit, I redesigned our programs to include participatory action research where young people, people with disabilities, became the data collectors and not the subjects. And so this mindset carried over into the PhD program in UMass Boston, where I'm studying global inclusion and social development. And so I'm also using the work with another institute known as the Institute for Community Inclusion here in Boston, where we're translating our research findings into tools that the states can use as payment models that make it easier to hire people with disabilities, or training that help the service providers move away from segregated work environments into competitive integrated employment. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm not simply collecting data, I'm building change from that. And so what the Commonwealth Scholarship did was give me the space, the platform to really rethink power, whose knowledge counts, and how do we design or redesign research that actually solves the wicked problems that we're seeing in the world right now. And so, to be honest, the most powerful outputs that I have worked on were not only about academia, they were the projects like, we did a short documentary produced with our team and youths in Nigeria and youths with disability in Malawi refugee camp, where they talked about their dreams, the barriers towards employment and employment opportunities. So all of this for us were data points, storytelling. And we have been able to share the stories, which is our form of data with employers, with policy teams at the global and local events. And we did all of this because we understand that research is most impactful when it's in the voice of the people you're trying to reach. And all of this has really made me very intentional about collaboration and trust. And it's also really helped me to strategically ask the right questions and make knowledge useful in a way that's humble, useful and promotes shared ownership. So what I can say in the limelight is that, research is important, but thinking about other strategic ways of how research can be done, that it reaches the people who are outliers is very, very important. So thank you. I'll pass it on back to you.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for the very insightful points that you actually presented just now. Actually, I would like to add on as well. What Rachel mentioned was exactly true. Like bridging the gap between academic research and the real world application could be actually one of the most important point, and also one of the most important aim that we have to chase. So when I was a Commonwealth scholar, that was one of the main point that I was looking for as well. So what I managed to do was transforming all the knowledge that I gained from my academic research. For an example, I was working closely with chemistry, polymeric chemistry. So I had the opportunity to actually translate all my knowledge into a proper industries for me to able to actually transform this sustainable chemistry, green chemistry into industries which are actually focusing now. So this is one of our way to actually give back what we have gained so far through Commonwealth Scholarship. So that's my point. So let's move on for the second question. So what mechanisms have proven most effective for facilitating research collaboration across Commonwealth nation, and what barriers still need to be addressed? So can we hear your bit, Riazit? Riazit, I think you are muted.
Sorry, common problem. So yeah, it's a very interesting question, I would say. I had that opportunity to work on a project which is on fire prevention in Dhaka, Bangladesh, and Cape Town, South Africa, just a couple of years after I finished my master's. So that's a good experience I could share, which can deal with this question. It's so even though it's a common problem, right? Like fire prevention in urban slums in Dhaka and also in Cape Town, South Africa. But the context, the people living in urban slums and informal settlements, it's different. So some of the barriers initially I faced, or we as a team faced, was the context of people, the language, the timings even. So these are some of the barriers. So what we did to deal with those barriers was spend a lot of time initially, hashing out all the problems that we could face, or how to deal with those problems, come for a common ground we decided on. And so that helped a lot in dealing those issues. And also some other useful mechanisms was we spend a lot of time doing workshops, brainstorming, like understanding people, the understanding from communities, especially the slums and informal settlements that we worked on. We tried to pick some community organizers who work there, so that we could get their help, because it's sometimes difficult to even enter into those informal settlements to work. So that helped, I think, that community support. My takeaway is like spend a lot of time initially, try to understand even though if you have a initial question or a problem to solve, you definitely gonna find some more intricate problems when you talk with the people, when you talk with the community. So that helps accessing those informations, those data. So engaging with the community, taking their help, bringing them as part of the project or research, like that helps. So I think there is an opportunity because, as I was saying, these two Commonwealth countries, South Africa and Bangladesh, and my experience working there is there is a could be a funding mismatch, I would say. Like you spend so much time and on initially, those are sometimes like not funded. That time is not funded, which is, I think, the most important aspect. You build those like grounded practices, which takes you forward with the outcome that is actually funded. So I would say that that should be recognized more. That initial time that you spend with your team, with the communities, with the problems and everything. So that would be like my practical change that I would suggest. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the points that you have addressed, Riasit. So my takeaway based on your points would be communication is the key skill of what we are actually looking for. And another thing is we need, in order for us to find a solution, we need to ask questions. We need to ask questions, and we need to go to the ground. We need to go to the ground people who are actually doing the work. We have to communicate with the ground people in order for us to know what is the issue going on, and also we need to address research and apply it in the real world application. Thank you so much for your input, Riasit. So let's go to our next question, which is what innovative approaches have you employed to ensure your research reaches non-academic audiences, including policymakers, practitioners, and communities? We would like to hear from you, Senya.
Thank you very much. Hello?
Yep.
Thank you very much, Moisha.
Yeah, sure.
So over the years in this field of practice, one of the biggest challenges that I've observed, or one of the biggest challenges with research is that it often assumes that people will come to the knowledge, but in reality, the knowledge must come to the people. So at Jalini Farms and Food, what we have done is we sort of use a hyper-localized model to translate research into action. So for example, research on women's seasonal vulnerability or income instability or food insecurity is translated into things like seed banks, into things like village savings and loans groups, and introduction of alternative livelihood options like bee farming. So the information that we got from our research told us that, okay, at a particular season, during the raining season, this is when the women are most vulnerable because the communities that we work with are coastal communities, or in this time, it's more difficult for them to get things like firewood, so they would deplete the mangrove that is closer to their community, and all of these has effects on them. And we later translated this into, okay, so if women are weakest during this period, what if they could have a village savings and loans group where we could also introduce alternative livelihood, so they don't have only one source of livelihood, they have alternatives. And also, these are not just add-ons, they are delivery mechanisms for knowledge. We co-create these systems with the communities that we work with, and we ensure that the local realities, such as the planting season, the climate risk, the household responsibilities, all of it is reflected. And moving beyond this, research is embedded in how we sort of get our products to the farthest communities. First, we work with agents, local agents, which are mostly women. These women act as sort of knowledge brokers. So they don't only sell the products, but they explain about nutrition, they talk about child feeding practices, the value of local foods, and all of this is done in local languages. So to our mothers and caregivers, so they get to understand the message clearly in the simplest terms. Secondly, we use value addition as communication. So instead of lecturing them about nutrition science or and all that, we deliver it through culturally familiar food. The product itself becomes the vehicle of the research. We also work with farmers. So we translate climate smart agriculture research into simple, economically rewarding practices. So, okay, so instead of cutting your mangroves in your community to make room for more rice paddies, what if we could actually practice something like rice silviculture? Your rice could be planted within the mangrove paddies as well, and it would grow. And they are seeing the results. And it's protecting their communities from being inundated by water. So farmers adopt this science because they see immediate value, better yields, they have assured markets, and there's income. So in this way, the research, it doesn't just stay abstract, but it becomes something that people could eat, something people could sell and earn from. We also pay close attention to how this information is accessed. So a lot of the farmers that we work with are non-literate. So we prioritize things like peer learning, community meetings, and we increasingly explore voice-based options in local languages for communication. So when research is embedded in how people earn, how they save, how they produce, it stops being academic, it becomes practical, and it becomes actionable. Monisha, back to you.
Thank you, Sanya. Actually, you have a very great input on this matter. I would like to add on that by saying that actually, we researchers tend to have more complicated and scientific ways to identify what is our problem in our research and how do I find a solution and so on. But in order for us to apply it in the real world, we need to make sure that our scientific research is more on a layman term in order for us to reach to more communities and also non-literate people. So that way we can actually present our product or our scientific research into a more usable or more practical methods for them to solve their own issues as well. So thank you for your input, Sanya. So we will go back to our next question, which is, what emerging research priorities do you believe are most critical for advancing equity and prosperity across the Commonwealth nations? So what do you think on this question, Mr. Solvik?
Thanks, Monisha. And first of all, I would like to thank all my co-panel speakers over here for wonderful insights. Before I start, so I did my post-graduation in engineering for sustainable development from University of Cambridge 2010-11, where I was a Commonwealth shared scholar. I was in sustainability prior to that also, but after that, of course, I got a lot of direction, and eventually I worked in consulting industry. So from the lens of global sustainability, having worked in different geographic regions and working with organizations across different sectors, I see a shift in what actually moves the needle on equity. You had an equity part in the question, so it's no longer just about generating knowledge, but also about how we design the systems today that can absorb the pressures, the shocks, and act on it. So probably I would like to focus on three areas from my knowledge as an experience as how I've seen in the last 2 decades. One is definitely, translation or translating, research on climate and economic resilience. I think it's very key. We obviously come across a lot of scenarios in our daily life across different parts of the world, from wildfire to floods and all that, and how that impacts, all the three pillars of E, S, and G, yeah, environmental, social, and governance. So I think we need research that connects climate science to jobs, supply chains, livelihoods, and especially in climate vulnerable Commonwealth economies. It's very key. So it's not only about the climate risk assessments, but it's about creation-ready insights which we could implement. We talk a lot about climate adaptation also, and I think this is very, very key. Of course, at corporates or the global leaders, we see that those are getting integrated, but I feel it's very much important for the, the informal sectors or for the MSMEs as well. And probably, I was hearing to all my co-panel speakers, and I was hearing to Richard's migration, research and Lane's what he was talking about. So I'm not going to repeat that, but I believe this point probably complements to his excellent research work. The second point probably I would like to highlight, and this is a space where I have seen how evaluation has happened, is the sustainability data governance capacity and reporting in the emerging markets. So equity, today is not only about and it's increasingly getting shaped probably by who can measure, disclose transparently and govern responsibly, and who cannot. Okay, that starts from the corporate level to sectoral level and building onto regional and national and global level. That's probably what my observation is. And so it's not only about just having frameworks and methodologies. It's about practical implementation of sustainability and integration to the systems and procedures. So the next point I would also like to highlight is very key about the capacity building for the regulators or the sustainability professionals, public institutions, SMEs, who are working in this domain of this ESG data governance and reporting. And finally, the third point, which of course, with my current background, I think is digital public infrastructure for inclusion is very, very important nowadays, because digitalization can either widen or can narrow inequality. And I'm pretty much sure all of you will agree that research has proved that the latter is the better. So, we talk about a lot on responsible AI today, the digital trust, tech-enabled access to finance, financial inclusion, education, services. And of course, there's a strong crossover actually, across different Commonwealth border, the collaboration agenda. And definitely this conference is a great, excellent example of that. So yeah, I mean, keeping all these points which I mentioned, if I need to summarize, I would probably mention that the next wave of impactful research or impactful Commonwealth research is less about the borders between the countries. It's more about breaking the silos among all these nations, that we have probably in academia, industry, and policy. And it's all about working cohesively and working together. Yeah, probably I will conclude here, and over to you, Manisha. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Savik. So, like you said, it is extremely important to understand that sustainability actually progress increasingly depends on the organizational ability to measure, disclose, and govern ESG practices. And also, it is actually a responsibility that we hold by every other department or every other government as well. So it should be like industries, corporate, sectoral, regional, and also global levels. So everyone should be working cohesively in order for us to make this sustainable development into a breaking point in our lives. So thank you for your point. We will move on with the next question. We will get back to you, Riasit. Can you share a specific example where research conducted during or after your scholarship directly influenced policy, practice, or community outcomes?
Thank you, Monisha. It started during my scholarship, I would say. I have been working in an NGO prior to going to London for my master's, and it was more like a hands-on learning, the issues in Dhaka city, the urban issues, I would say. So that actually influenced me to apply for Commonwealth Scholarship and the subject that I studied, which was sustainable development and international planning. So it started from there, and I would say that I had an opportunity because there were different in my class. There were different students from different countries, and throughout that 1 year, I had time to discuss our problems. We worked on projects. They were from different backgrounds and skills as well. So that helped me with like afterwards, like after I was done with my master's, and I ended up I went back to Dhaka, my country, and I saw the problems on a different lens, the learnings that I got from that 1 year of my master's. And I found an issue which was everyone knew, but it was somehow like neglected, which was migration in Dhaka city from like multiple other cities and villages and rural areas. And it was talked about, but it was not like looked into, like what are the actual background issues that that holds that pushes these people to like Dhaka city. So my research was about, my PhD was about that the climate-induced migrants and the transitions that they go through. It shouldn't be so straightforward. Like you have an issue in your in a rural area or in a different city, and then you come to Dhaka city. There must be an underlying reason. So that was my PhD about, and I found out that the climate-induced migrants, they go through like multiple transitions. One transition is that there is a climate issue, like a disaster that takes place in that location, which leads to them losing lands, losing their financial abilities, and which leads them to come to Dhaka. And then there is another transition of like employment, like what kind of employment do they go through after landing in to Dhaka. And then the third transition is like what else, like when you move from one work to another, like what is there for them, in the future. So this is something that I wanted to find. And one of the issues that I faced, which I wasn't prepared for when I went from London to Dhaka to interview climate-induced migrants, I thought I would find a lot of them in urban slums and informal settlements. But the identifying them is very difficult, because when you go to informal settlements and you ask them that why did you come to Dhaka, and the major reason is economic reasons, but that doesn't identify you as a climate-induced migrant, isn't it? So it becomes really challenging when you want to find out a climate-induced migrant, and that migrant doesn't know the specific reason why they moved. So this is something that I created, was like a template, like a survey questionnaire, which you can use to identify climate-induced migrants, which was very effective during my interviews, during my identification. And I was able to like interview 50 climate-induced migrants from 5 urban slums and informal settlements. So that is something which was recognized well, and it has been used by a couple of NGOs in Dhaka to identify like climate-induced migrants. You will find a lot of data that this much people like migrated from different locations, but to find out who are actually climate-induced migrants, because their aspirations, their capabilities are different from a general urban migrants, right? So there is something that came out of my PhD, which wasn't planned, but which is something that was really useful for me, and I'm really glad that it has been useful for a couple of other organizations as well. And regarding policies, I just finished my PhD, but I did recommended some policies, like urban policies for Bangladesh, which would lead to, hopefully, which will lead to the government recognizing climate-induced migrants and having some policies which will be specifically around them instead of like general urban policies. So I'm hopeful that the outcome or my policy recommendations, my findings from my PhD will be hopefully useful for the organizations back home and also for the government. Thank you. Thank you, Monisha.
Thank you, Fia. Thank you, Riaset. That's actually a very valuable input from what you have studied during your PhD. So I guess somehow every scholar are obligated, somehow in some reasons, every scholar are obligated to transform their research knowledge into some policies or some design systems in order for us to translate what we have learned into this real world application. And I really hope every scholars are able to do that in order for us to gain more knowledge and present it or actually help the people out there, the outliers, to actually apply it in their real life as well. So we would move on to the next question. Beyond traditional academic metrics, how do you measure and demonstrate the social impact of your research, particularly in resource-constrained settings? Rachel, what do you think on this matter?
All right. Thank you, Monisha. I feel like when we talk about societal impact, especially in settings with limited resources, we have to look beyond the numbers on the paper or the citations on journals. And for me, the real impact kind of shows up in the lives that are trying to be improved, like the systems that are changing, the power sharing. And when I think of an example that stands out for me, it's a project that my organization, my nonprofit in Nigeria, Special Needs Initiative for Growth, has been doing since 2019. Is a flagship program that we set up with another nonprofit known as the Let Cerebral Palsy Kids Learn Foundation. And this project is known as Empowered Mothers Thriving Children. And the program is actually an annual project that comes up every summer for about 10 cohort of mothers and 10 cerebral palsy children. This project is focused on the mothers of children with cerebral palsy. We call it CP, most of whom have been left out of education, of jobs, and even conversations around care. And these women are often blamed for their children's conditions and isolated and pushed into poverty. And what this project does is give them access to entrepreneurial training, health knowledge, financial literacy, digital skills, peer support. But we did not just train these women and their children. We built a system where their growth was visible to them and their communities, and they became decision makers in what they felt was best for their future. So how did we measure the impact when we couldn't rely on the formal surveys or academic citations? What we did is we looked at things like, did the women start businesses, eventually after this program, or scale their businesses? Did the confidence level, did it change? Did their children get access to learning spaces that they were once excluded from? Because in specific communities where I come from, getting a child who has a disability into the mainstream school is quite difficult. And one mother began a poultry business. This is one example, and used her income to buy a wheelchair for her child with cerebral palsy. And so for us, all of this were the clear signs of the improvement or change that I earlier talked about. And we also watched for more ripple effects, like some mothers becoming peer mentors, others starting lead advocacy efforts, and local policymakers began paying attention to us because they saw that our work was beyond the normal journal or things that were done in writing was more you could see it visibly. So we were invited by international organizations such as the Presidential Precinct in Virginia, in the United States to talk about our work. This specific project, I mean, even their world in the United Kingdom, also looked at this work to be more viable. The World Summit on Information and Society, where we won the 2021 prize champion for this specific project in fostering inclusion and digital growth for mothers and children with cerebral palsy. So all of this projects, and people who saw this work gave us meaning into what we were doing, and they saw that the model could be highly acknowledged and innovative and replicative for the inclusion of people with disabilities. Now, this is a policy shift that rooted in lived experiences. It was not a top-down theory for us. Another way that I feel like I measure impact is by the kind of questions that people ask after the research or after field work or community based participatory research. So like questions are like, do teachers start asking how to teach, children with disabilities differently? Do health workers talk about stigma? Do employers reconsider hiring practices? In resource poor context, these small shifts truly matter because they often help with the beginning of structural change. And so I have learned, for me, I have learned that in these settings, listening is also a valid part of measuring. We hold feedback circles, we do photo stories, video documentaries, community dialogues. These spaces give people a chance to tell what is working and what is not in their own comfort, in their own words. And this for us is how we keep the work grounded and very realistic. And so, yes, academic metrics are very important, but in my work, success also looks like, a mother who now leads her own support group, after she's gone through cohorts of training or boot camps of training, or a school that opens its door for a child with disability for the first time after several constraints, or maybe a government unit that finally creates space for parents with children with disabilities to contribute to policy. I feel like all of this that I've talked about is how I know research is doing what it's meant to do, which is, really improving people's lives. So I think I'll stop here and pass the mic back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. That's some insightful points that you have provided us. Actually, it is true. Research or going through a PhD studies doesn't really matter if we can't apply it. So these non-profit organizations are one of our stepping stones for us to actually reach out to the needy in order for us to apply and also present to them what we actually really can do for them. So these are one of their safe space, like you mentioned, for them to actually be themselves and also accept help from us. And that way we can actually transform or shift our ideas into a real world application and also help them in the same time. Thank you so much. That was very insightful, Rachel. So let's move on. So this question is actually for Soik. How can the next generation of Commonwealth scholars be better prepared to maximize the impact of their research in an increasingly interconnected world? So what do you think about this?
Thanks, Monisha. So I think this question is quite important these days, and it comes up in several discussions. Apart from my professional profile, I visit different universities and B schools for my talks and lectures, and this is something which I've seen coming across different discussion topics or, in the Q&A sessions. So I think, what I've learned moving between academia, consulting, industry, or visiting academia again as a speaker, that, impact probably doesn't fail because research is weak. It probably fails or it doesn't connect in today's world. Maybe the translation skills are sometimes missing. That's my, opinion. And probably, I can suggest around like three shifts which can be proposed is the scholars or the which the Commonwealth scholars who are currently pursuing their education or they're coming out need to be trained probably as research translators and not just researchers, because it's quite important that we teach the scholars on how to convert the findings of their study into boardroom policies, or the systems governance that can be built around the community language where an industry is operating. This is because that will help actually the storytelling with evidence, the dashboards or the business cases different industry across sectors they use. So it is very, very important for researchers or, as I said, the word research translators to understand how decision cycles are made in an industry or in a practical world beyond academia. The second thing I think probably is around policy or community exposure or embedding industry knowledge and experience. That might be like short secondments or to different industry across regions, or co-creation labs with different governments, NGOs, which probably nowadays are happening. We are seeing a lot of such kind of initiatives from different corporates because we need to have outputs that we can use in our daily life in day one, and that is something my co-panel speakers were also highlighting the importance around it. The other point I believe is about building confidence in navigating through the complexity, the trade-offs in daily life. It's quite complex. Real world, practical world is quite messy, quite difficult. It's we all learn from our experience, right? So scholars, I believe, need to have such kind of tools where they can engage with the regulators, the industry leaders, okay, and they can study what the dynamics are, how what are the impending regulations, or what are the shifts in different business models are happening, because this systematic thinking is very, very important in uh, uh, you have to do it ethically, you have to do it in a pragmatic way. And in today's world, of course, it's all about cross-cultural, whether it is leadership or running a team or operating. So I believe those kind of trade-offs or having building confidence in such kind of navigating in complex scenario is very important. So probably if I need to conclude, I would summarize that Commonwealth scholars, they are intelligence, but it's not all about intelligence only. It's about combining the intellectual rigor with real world, fluency. Then I believe they will not be only informed about the changes, they will be leading that in their work domain going forward. So that's how I would like to conclude. Yeah, thanks. Over to you, Manisha.
Thank you, Souvik. That's actually a very good point. I would like to explain more on that based on my experience as well. So, when I graduated after my PhD studies, I entered into industry. So, what I found as an obstacle was that I couldn't translate. I found hard to translate all the research knowledge that I had into a layman terms for me to put it into the management. So, for me to explain to the management, it was a difficult thing for me to do, because what I would understand is something scientific and complicated, and I couldn't present it to them because it was supposed to be in layman terms. So what your point is actually very true, whereby we actually require research translators for us to make sure that the real world also understands what we are actually trying to explain based on our research. So that is actually a very, very valid point, and I really hope that upcoming generation of Commonwealth scholars or any other PhD scholars would really understand the importance of translating our knowledge into a layman term for other people, other outliers to understand on that as well. Thank you so much, Souvik. So let's move on to the next question. How do you navigate the challenges of adapting research findings from one cultural or economic context to another while maintaining their integrity and relevance? So I would like to hear on this question from Senya, please.
Thank you very much. So before starting Jalimi Farms and Foods, I worked at West African Biodiversity and Climate Change. This was a highly research-oriented project as a livelihood specialist. So that experience was sort of formative because it exposed me to rigorous research on climate change, livelihoods, community vulnerability, but it also revealed a major gap that whilst research is strong, the practicalization of the research was often not sufficient. So when the project ended, I continued working with some of these communities. It became clear to me that research alone doesn't create the change. Translation and ownership do work that magic. So in addressing your question, adapting research across context starts with recognizing that science and culture must work together. I approach research translation by separating principles from prescription. So the integrity of research, I would say, lies at its core. For example, I'm just going to give examples from some of the work that I've done. So for example, women's economic roles are undervalued, or the livelihoods must be resilient, and so on and so forth. However, how those are applied should be locally defined. It would vary from context to context. So some of the people that I worked with had worked in contexts such as Asia and all that. So they brought knowledge from Asia, and that was not locally defined. So at Jalimi, what we then did now was we ensured that the people that we work with or the communities that we work with are not just passive recipients of some of the solutions that we came with, but they are co-designers. They help decide how we get to help them, how the seed banks are managed, how the savings group perform, how the alternative livelihoods that they could adopt in their own context. So this co-creation process sort of ensures relevance in preserving the research foundation. When communities shape these solutions, their trust increases, their adoption improves, and the impact lasts way beyond any project or any research timeline. At the same time, in terms of forming the solution itself that we had. So I'm looking at some of the global nutritional standards that were out there. They will tell you, okay, you should get X, Y, and Z nutrients. But these were often very, I'll say, expensive or unfamiliar to some of these communities. So what we then did is translate local research. We did research on what's locally available, what could have the right nutrients and all that, and we created a product, which is our baby food. So that's where we were able to maintain nutritional integrity, and also the science behind it was not lost. Macronutrient requirements, everything was there, but also it was culturally acceptable, and we used locally homegrown products. And also we ensured that it was affordable. The product was affordable. Unlike products that came in from outside the country, it was affordable. And working with some of these communities, some of the most vulnerable communities, you know that affordability is something that's non-negotiable. So research loses its integrity if it cannot be implemented economically. For us, our model ensured that nutritional solutions remain accessible to these underserved communities. And this way, the science remains scientifically sound, culturally accepted, and economically viable. So that looks like real translation of research for us. Over to you, Monisha.
Thank you so much, Sanya. To add to your point, I would really say that it's actually a very good approach. In order for us to maintain our integrity and also the relevance of our research, we actually can adapt into some other products. For an example, if we are using certain part of components that we are purchasing in a higher price, in order to be affordable, we can actually opt into something organic or something that is being actually manufactured by the local people in order for us to manufacture a product that is equally good and also affordable. So that is actually a very valid point from you, and thank you so much for your point of view. So right now, I would like to open the question floor to the participants over here. So if there's any questions, if you would like to ask the panelists or anyone in this session, you very much appreciate it if you can drop your questions in the chat box. So we will give ourselves maybe a minute or so before we can continue. I think we can actually proceed with our next session. We actually have a few more questions to go. So I will ask the next question, which is, what strategies have you found successful for securing long-term funding and institutional support to sustain the research impact beyond initial project phases? So I would like to ask this question to Riaset. Over to you.
I think although for a project to have when you are funded for a certain period, right? And so I think you should design the project in such a way so that there is a follow-up to it. For example, if I am trying to find a solution to like an urban problem, for example, let me give you an experience, like from my experience, let me give you one which I worked on, as I was saying before, like fire prevention. So we did the research for like a year. We found some findings, we reported, but you should design it in such a way so that there are phases of follow-up as well. You find the solution, you train the communities, but there should be a way that in regular intervals, like you go back to the community, go back to those locations and see like how it's performing. And also, like, we live in a world which is changing continuously. A solution which is working right now might not be viable 1 year later, right? So there could be a more efficient way or a better way, or the problem is something else now that we solved one, another problem came up. So I think if you follow up with your project, you keep a certain duration of regular follow-ups, I think that could be like one successful way. Like that should be in your strategy or in your project. Like that could be one way of like securing a long-term funding, I think. Thank you, Monisha.
Okay. That's a very good point. Actually, we have another question though from Rizwan. How we can impart or translate knowledge from research to practical life? Maybe Rachel, can you answer this question for him?
Okay. I think, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Hello?
Okay. All right. I wasn't sure. Okay. So that question is very relevant because like I said early on, research is not linear. There are different ways that research can be imparted, and we don't have to look at it in journals or reports or in in publications, let's put it that way. There are other ways to ensure that research gets to the lived experience of the people in the communities that need it the most. So I think when we talk about translation, translation is something that doesn't have to be linear. It can be something that could really make people's lives see it from their own point of view. And one way I've learned to make research useful in real life or impactful is by involving people it's meant for right from the start, not after you've written your findings, like an afterthought, you go back to them. So if a study is about public health per se, do not just study nurses. Sit with them, listen to their frustrations, and try to see if you can design with these people. Because the moment you go back or they hear that you've done the research and you never consulted with them or something, it could kind of create animosity. And we've seen a lot of community conflicts or tensions where researchers go to the field, they work with communities as ethnographers, and they publish the report and the community hears about it and they feel very offended that they have been used. So it's really good to make your work grounded. When people see when the people see themselves in the process, they're more likely to take up the outcomes and become co-ownership of what you've done, and they feel like they've not been used or exploited. Also, I would say do not wait till the end to share your research. You can share insights bit by bit, even before the final results. You can use storytelling, you could use short videos, you could use photo voice, small group discussions, whatever, even a Delphi panel. When you speak with people who are experts in that field, you can always go back to them for member check-in just to know that you're on the right track. Whatever works for your audience, try to use it. I once used community theater to explain findings from a study on disability and stigma in marketplaces. So, it was just drama and it clicked with the people at that time. I feel another thing is language. If you present knowledge in big words, I think someone mentioned that it's really good to think about bringing the language in a way that's clear and not fancy, that people can really understand. People would switch off if the language is really ambiguous. So if you say, here is what we found, here is why it matters for your daily life, here is what you can do next, then it becomes very realistic. It becomes very connective. So we need to stop thinking of research as a finished report. It should be a conversation. It should be a process. It should be a tool, not only for people who need it the most, who are like policymakers or the journals, but for everyday people, so that they can see how that research reflects with who they are and what they are all about. So I'll end it here and pass the mic back to you. Thank you. And I hope that
Thank you
the
so much,
response is
Rachel.
helpful to the person who asked. Yeah.
I hope the same as well. We have two more questions to answer, actually. So one is from Caroline. What strategies have you seen work when translating research into impact in contexts with limited funding, infrastructure, or political support? Maybe Senya, can you answer Caroline's question if possible? Your microphone is muted.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes. So Caroline's question, what strategies have you seen?
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of translating how the impact of research with limited funding, first of all, it's important that, just as Rachel said, simplify it as best as you can. That way it's easier to adopt. Most importantly, the community has to know, or whoever you're working with, they have to know how that research impacts them. They have to know what their role is. In terms of the political support, I believe how it's disseminated, how that research information is disseminated really, really matters. It really, really counts. So in terms of funding, you can work with as little as some of us are working with, but just ensure that the language is simple. Those who are supposed to get the information, because a lot of times we do research for local people, but then take it to policy level. It doesn't relate to them. So research that's for policy level should inform policy level people. Research that's for local people should be taken down to the local people. So work with your community of impact as best as possible, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your response, Sanya. So there's another question from Michelle. How do you motivate yourself to continue your research when you hit blocks like fatigue, lack of funding, imposter syndrome, misaligned findings, and etc.? So I think I could answer this question on behalf of other panelists as well. So motivation comes in different ways, I would say. But after all, remember what is the aim when you started your research? What was the stepping stone for you to start your research? What made you to start this research for you to go on to this extent? So when you are at a point where you find a lot of obstacles coming your way, always remember your starting point. That's where you started, and that's the reason why you started. And that way we can actually face all the obstacles. You are not to run away of all the obstacles. In order for you to achieve what you want, you are not to run away, but face it. But one thing at a time. Make sure you go through it one thing at a time. So when you are feeling there's lack of funding, find a solution. And sometimes there's always a problem that is not it's out of your comfort zone. So you have to move towards that. And there will be a lot of times where some situations will be out of your control. So I would suggest that stop controlling it, start focusing on what you can control and what you can achieve meanwhile. So for everything, the conclusion is just remember your starting point. Why? What was the reason for you to start this research? What was the reason for you to give back to the community? Focus on that and go for it. So I hope I answered on behalf of all the panelists on this question. So I have one more last question from Adama. Has an early career professional navigating global health and hospital administration with research interests, what advice would you share on how to engage and build a research portfolio, particularly in LMICs with limited or no funding and low research capacity? Maybe Sowie could answer this question.
Yeah, sure. That's a very good question, and I can definitely try answering that. But before, how much time do I have? So then accordingly.
Yeah, maybe around 1 or 2 minutes explanation would be really sufficient. Yeah.
Yeah. So probably, I will take that question as a representative of different, sectors, areas where, funding opportunities are less. So, probably I will keep it a bit generic, but try to address the issue which, probably is posed in this question, which is a fantastic one. I think this is where the Commonwealth institutions, organizations, academia, everyone, all the stakeholders would need to, invest actually. They can scale up by not only investing in just pilots, projects and all that, but supporting, governance, data systems, cross-sectoral partnerships that allow successful interventions. So sometimes a particular sector may not have that funding opportunity, but when integrated with other sectors, or with inclusion of responsible AI, seeing the possibility of it as how it can be taken to the next level, obviously those in those scenarios the funding opportunity definitely increases. And yeah, I mean, and obviously when there is a chance of funding opportunity, there will be an expectation of scaling up. So, and that that can be done through pairing with local adaptation, or working with local stakeholders like the NGOs, local administration, governments. And I'm sure there are a lot of opportunities. If not, again, that is where we, coming from our own research interest, our networking opportunities, we can definitely make it more effective, and make it more contextual in today's world. So that is probably how I would like to answer this question. Thanks. Over to you, Manisha.
Okay, thank you so much for the answer, Sovic. So as we have come to the end of the session, there are a few more questions that they are still popping up. So I hope these questions could be answered later. So we have come to the end of the session. So throughout this session, we have gained valuable insights into how research within the Commonwealth goes beyond borders to create meaningful global impact. And today's discussion has highlighted the importance of collaboration, knowledge sharing, and also translating research into solutions that benefits society, industries, and future generations. And also, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to our distinguished panelists for sharing their expertise and perspectives, and to our audience for your engagement and thoughtful participation. Let us continue to foster collaboration and ensure that knowledge remains a powerful tool for progress and positive change. Thank you, everyone, and I wish you have a wonderful day ahead. Back at you, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope everybody has had such a great time listening to Monisha and the panelists. And I want to say thank you, Monisha. I think you did an incredible job as a moderator, so thank you for that. And I also repeat my thanks to the speaker that we had before and the panelists for such a thoughtful and engaging discussions. Thank you very much. Everyone, today's session, in my view, invited us to reflect deeply on the ideas that the speakers have raised, and to examine critical pathways through which Commonwealth-funded research can translate into tangible societal impact. What has come through, if you listened to the panelists, is that impact doesn't happen by accident. It requires deliberate collaboration, openness, a willingness to go beyond what you traditionally are comfortable with, or what your boundaries are. And that means disciplinary-wise, institutional-wise, geographical-wise. Like we had seniors speak of the application of research locally and economically, bearing in mind the community that is being served. Equally important, we had the panelists also emphasize on asking better questions and intentionally including those who are often missing from the conversation. Example is the great work that's being done by Rachel in Nigeria, which started from questions that she asked herself when she was a student in St. Andrews. Across the panel, there was a shared recognition for the need to build systems, strengthen capacity, and invest in infrastructure that enables genuine inclusion. Rachel told us to design research to resolve existing problems and to involve those whose lives that research is going to impact. And to borrow, finally, to borrow a very powerful idea that I got from the panelists and the keynote speaker, is that education and knowledge form part of the equity infrastructure that connects human potential to human progress, as can be seen from the research translations that all these panelists are currently doing, system and organizations that they've put together. And we had research, I hope that's the name, I hope I haven't butchered that, talked about successful research intervention to benefit the wider and underserved population in his home country, and the need to keep this research updated. And then also we're told that when grounded in equity, knowledge moves beyond borders and even beyond silos, as Sovic reminded us. And also at the beginning, we were told by Professor did I forget the name? Professor Mason, that CSC in like terms appreciates potential and capability and invests in it for a long-term impact. Ultimately, all these movements from research, education to improvement of lives is the essence of today's theme, which is knowledge without borders in the Commonwealth context. Now this has brought us to the end of the session, but before we leave, I would like to remind you, a quick reminder that the program continues later today. We do have workshops which are going to be, I believe, displayed shortly that we have today. Please attend those workshops, network as you are told. I believe this is, yes, the workshops will start at 1500 to 1720. We also, for purposes of feedback to the CSC and the British Council, do take the survey. A QR code will be shared on your screen. I don't know if it's now possible to see it, but it should be shared on your screen. Please take the survey. Yes, we do have the post-event survey on the screen. Please take the survey. These sessions also, and remember to attend, of course, the sessions in the afternoon to help us build on the theme for the 3-day event. We encourage you to stay engaged and take full advantage of what is ahead. I hope to meet all of you at some point in those other coming sessions. And this brings us to the end of our morning session, and see you all in the afternoon sessions.